It took a long time getting settled there, actually. I was thinking. Hi. I'm Daniel Whittington, the Chancellor of Wizard Academy and Whiskey Marketing School. This video is about context is everything. So have you ever heard the phrase, that's a heavy bottle? I was unprepared for how much heavier a liter-sized bottle, actually bigger than a liter, I think. No, it's a liter. It does that thing where it sloshes in the direction of the weight of the whiskey because it's so big. Have you ever heard someone say they come back from Dublin or Ireland and they're like, there's no Guinness like the Guinness in Ireland. And a part of you just wants to punch them? Because here's what I've always thought about that sentence. And I've had Guinness in Ireland. I've had many Guinness in Ireland. Much Guinness. What's the plural of Guinness? Guinness. Guinness is a multinational global conglomerate brand, and they have no upside to making all the Guinness in the world inferior to the Guinness on a small island west of England. There's no upside to a corporation that's that big, that influential across the planet to not have consistency of product no matter where you go. I guarantee you they are fighting for consistency of product so that the Guinness you drink in a pub in Waco, Texas is as close as possible to the Guinness you pour on tour of the Guinness factory or, brewery in Dublin. And so when someone says, it's better here, I always think, what? Really though? And I get there's a difference between draft and can and bottle. Yeah. Don't go coming for me in the comments. However, I'm also going to say this. I've never had better Guinness than I had in a pub in Dublin, Ireland, a couple of years ago. And I totally get it. And I think it's because when you're sitting in a pub in Ireland in a dark corner, drinking a pint of Guinness, it feels in every way correct. Like it's the only thing that should be done at that moment, and like you've never had Guinness until this moment because of the weather and the temperature and the environment and the pub and the history and the accents and the people and everything around that sip of Guinness, as I just go whack on the microphone, everything around that sip of Guinness is increasing the experience of the Guinness. And sense of smell is most of taste, and smell lives in memory and emotion part of your brain. And so emotional context and memory context has everything to do with your actual experience of a beverage. So, I would argue there's no better Lafroig than I had from the barrel sitting in Warehouse 1 at a tour on Islay at the Lafroig Distillery. Is it a practical, objective reality? No. So how do you get an objective reality to understand those kinds of things? We'll talk about that in a second, but first we're going to drink Jameson, because hey-o, Ireland. This is cool. This was brought by Devin Forgea, and Devin, I promise I'm going to get your name exactly right. Forget. I'm always hassling Devin about his last name, and I always feel bad about it because there's a point at which you joke about people's last names, and then there's a point at which people feel not seen. And I'm never quite sure which line or which side of the line I'm on with some people. This was a release they call the 5 Oak Cask release. So bourbon, sherry, and Irish whiskey, virgin, European and American virgin oak. So used barrels of all kinds and unused barrels of both European oak and American oak barrels, all blended together, and it's completely pot still, none of the grain base, so it's not a blended Jameson, it's pot still Jameson, and that's really cool, and you can buy it on their website for like 60 pounds. I don't know if it'll ship to the US, but I don't know how this is released. I don't know if it's travel exclusive or at the distillery, or I don't know that I've seen this in stores here in Austin. So your mileage may vary. Ooh, that nose. Oh, that nose. So I love this. I'm struggling for words because it's maybe one of the richest, more sweet, fruit-forward Jamesons I've ever picked up. I think the intensity of the vanillins have escalated the intensity of the sherry cask fruitiness at the same time. When you're blending things, often you'll find that adding something you think is missing has a different effect than you anticipated. And so like sometimes I've blended smoky whiskey into a sherry cask and it got a little too smoky, so I put more sherry cask in and it got twice as smoky tasting. And I was like, what happened? I just lowered the amount of, but I think what happened was the faintiness of the super aggressive sherry sort of boosted the phenolic notes of the smoke that I was experiencing, and so it made it feel more smoky, even though it had less in volume. And I think what's happening here in my brain is the berries and the fruit and the plum and the fig is like really explosive, but it's being carried by this really dense vanilla that I think is coming from the virgin oak. I really love the nose on this. I'm a big fan of Jameson. I order it at least once a week. I have the most basic, cheapest Jameson, and I'm always a fan. And I'm craving a Guinness right now with this. Woo! Okay, that's sweet. That's sweeter than I prefer. That is all the candy of the nose. And then the vanilla became vanilla sugar and instead of like a bready vanilla. That is very candied fruit forward. Wow. It's spicy too. That is a truly interesting, and at 46%, it punches way higher than that. It is rich. It's viscous, it's oily, it clings, but it's spicy and bitey, but it's not harsh. It's really fruity, but it's also really vanilla cream. Wow, this is, there's a lot going on in this thing that is like pushing against each other. I'm gonna add a little water. But this does this thing on the front palate where it comes in like smooth and butter, and then it goes like little sparkly firecrackers going off as the finish is all kind of bitey and peppery. So I'm gonna add just a little water there. Okay. I like that better. It simplified it. It lost a little bit of the complexity, but it's a little more approachable. It's a little more gentle. The water sort of added the creaminess, overcame the tannin, spicy, sparkly bits. I like it. I like it. I would keep this. It feels a little undefined for me, like I can't place it. But that's also kind of attracting me to it as well. Okay. So if all of your reality is so subjective, then what do you do about that? I'm going to argue one side of something even though I do the opposite. I would say don't bother. Don't bother trying to be objective. If you're a whiskey judge, or you're analyzing quality control, or in production, sure, find a way to be objective. Like we had rules in the blending room about what music we listened to and what was in our environment. And I know other blenders who do that because listening to the wrong music will change your blending experience and you'll blend differently. We're that easily malleable. And so most blenders try really, really hard to give themselves multiple rounds of context and they, instead of saying, I'm going to be objective, they accept the fact that they're not truly objective, and they give themselves 3 or 4 experiences to try to balance out whatever might have been influencing them on any one day. Or you add more people to the team. You just accept that you're malleable and you can be influenced, and if you're in a bad mood, you're going to blend differently. And so you have 2 or 3 other people on the team who are your backup safety, or you work together, and that's how you come to things. Just accept that that's how life works. There's no such thing in a sensory experience like whiskey that you can be truly objective. It's absolutely not possible. It's just not possible. And so instead of trying to fight for objectivity, what you do is embrace the subjectivity and then put in place checks and balances. Now, as a pure consumer, well, let me come back to that. Here's how serious I believe in this. We've had multiple, over the years, dozens plus people say, why don't you take whiskey marketing school on the road? Why don't you hold whiskey marketing school in Europe or in Canada? And my answer is always the same. We will absolutely never hold whiskey marketing school's sommelier program anywhere but here at Wizard Academy in the tower. Because this campus, this tower, this room, this space to my left is every bit a part of becoming a whiskey sommelier as the whiskey and the training and the education is. It just is. We can't do that in La Quinta Ballroom Southwest. It just doesn't work. And I accept that. If you're a consumer, I say embrace the subjectivity of the whiskey. Know that you love something, but know that you'll love it more if the people around you are your people and the environment is a place you love. Know that it's a campfire and good friends can transform a $20 bottle of blended scotch into a magical treasure. A truck cab with your dad driving down the road can transform a Jack Daniel's Black Label into, an age statement rare Pappy Van Winkle in your brain. And that's fine. Let context be king. That's okay. Enjoy it because it's fleeting. And I'm really glad you're here. Cheers to you. You know, it is also fleeting. The seeing these videos pop up in your feed if you haven't liked and subscribed.